All right. Testing 1, 2. Good morning, everybody. So, this one is about creating your life on purpose. So, without further ado, hi, guys. My name is Donnie Rouse, and you are listening to the podcast One Life Life on Purpose. Do you ever feel captive or a prisoner of your own life? Do you ever feel like you've created a monster and are now spending your time running from it? If this describes you, the reason why this is happening is because you were creating by default. Said differently, you weren't putting conscious thought into what it is that you were making. This happens a lot with the business and even in your family. But there is a way out of it. The good news is there is a way to break free from this prison. But it requires you to first understand, one, where are you feeling captive in your life? Like, what is it that you feel is imprisoning you? I'm using this descriptive analogy on purpose to intensify it. And then two, what is your ultimate vision? If you could have it any single way you want, how would you want it? You always have to start with the end in mind. Otherwise, you are creating by default and you're creating something that's not going to jive with who you are and what you want to be. And then the next step is just simply to start making some decisions. What are some things you could do now to start moving in the direction you want to go? Depending on where you are and how long you've let this go, will determine how quick you can get back on track. But the good thing is that you can, at the very least, you could make the process or wherever you are more enjoyable. Sometimes you might have responsibilities where you may not be able to now all of a sudden start that career path that you wanted. Well, maybe not in the short term. But you can start making decisions on how to make that experience more enjoyable, more fulfilling. Early in my career, when I first started in coffee, my plan was to open up a coffee shop. I had all these dreams of roasting the coffee, selling it in my cafe. But that's because I was very naive initially in my thinking. I didn't know what the process entailed, and I also didn't know roughly how it was going to engage with the rest of my life. I had purchased this small coffee roasting machine. It was a 2 kilo, so at most it could do is 4 pounds if you push it to the max, but usually it was like 3.5 pounds. In my mind, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. I'll buy this machine. I could roast coffee, 8 hours a day, and I'm going to love it. And all I have to do is just go out and sell it. I could generate X amount of dollars with this machine. When I purchased the machine and I started roasting, I realized, well, one, I don't want to sit by a machine 24/7 and roast. And then secondly, all right, I roast. Yeah, I could roast it all, but then I still have to go out and sell it. Now, all of a sudden, having this small machine didn't make sense because, well, if I had a machine with twice the capacity, I could do all this work in half the time. So it made me think differently about the work that I was setting myself up for. I'll give you one more example and how it relates to just having some vision for your life. When I wanted to open a cafe, I remember doing out the financials. I was looking at my projections and was determining, well, what kind of lifestyle do I want? And will this business be able to give me that lifestyle? Looking at worst case, best case, and the average case scenarios, I realized that the time requirements for me to do the cafe, the time requirements in terms of when I would be financially free, if any time, was a lot longer than I was willing to invest in. To add to another layer to that, a friend of mine has a series of cafes, very, very successful cafes. She was one of the first people in the industry, in the specialty coffee industry in New York City. And as a result, had a very, very nice reputation. I went up with one of my mentors and I said, hey, I'd like to ask you some questions. I'm thinking about getting into a cafe. Do you mind if I interview? She obliged. And then I went to one of her cafes and just started asking her questions. When she arrived to that information interview, she looked frazzled. Like, there was like strands of hair poking out in different directions. It looked like she had literally been to the ringer. When I saw her, I was like, hey, how are you? And her speech was just kind of stuttering. She's like, well, yeah, God, busy. We just opened this commissary kitchen for baked goods, and we opened another 2 cafes, and she was just frazzled. When I asked her about the experience of running it, she pretty much gave me the impression, like, why would you want to do this? Why would you want to do this? That interaction had an impact on me. So these 2 things are just examples of, one, buying that roaster and realizing after I made that decision, like, all right, well, this is not the way I want to move forward. And then when I was interviewing my friend, realizing, doing my due diligence to see, okay, well, does this align with the lifestyle I want? And doing the financial projections, all right, does this align with me? Very clearly it did not. So I chose not to forego the cafe. Fast forward, I started doing farmers markets because coffee is my passion. I love espresso. I love roasting. I love all the details that go into making a cup of coffee. The variables light me up because it's like solving a problem. You're always trying to figure out, well, how can I achieve the best cup? So I started my coffee company. I stepped out of farmers markets, starting selling in stores. And I had a hip beverage called Cold Roman Espresso. As things progressed, I just started going with the flow, going with the rhythm that it was taking me. To all of a sudden, I get to a point where I didn't know where I wanted to go. It was taking me a place that wasn't really aligned with how I wanted to spend the rest of my life. Granted, there was some planning in that. Doing the farmers markets and choosing not to have a retail location allowed me the off season and the flexibility to do travel, which is one of my greatest passions. So there was some forethought in setting up and creating this career path and how I was going to distribute my products. But it required much more. As popularity grew around my products, now all of a sudden I was in the space producing more. It took a lot more of my time. It was having a strain on my body because of all the lifting and moving around of the equipment and the product that I had to do. It was at that point I'm like, all right, well, this is not going to work anymore. I have to think of something differently. I got to do something different. But it wasn't just a matter of doing something different, because literally going back maybe 6 months ago, or maybe a little bit longer than that, the idea was, all right, let me do something different. Let me figure out what I have to do to alleviate this problem in this moment. But that's not the right thinking. If you're thinking about alleviating or eliminating the product in the moment, you're only getting yourself further and further behind the ball. You're only setting yourself with more stress, more things that you're going to have to figure out later on. The correct way to approach this is say, okay, well, this is how I've been doing it. Where is it that I want to go? Where do I want to take this? What kind of lifestyle do I want? And how is it going to impact every category of my life? Your work should support every category in your life, meaning your intellectual, how you feel emotionally, your relationships with your family and your lover, your health. Because if you're sacrificing any of these for your relationship, then if you're sacrificing any of these for your career, then your career is not serving its purpose. Your career is there to enhance your life, not take away from it. So looking at this now, I am at a place where I get to consciously create what it is that I want. So knowing that I love having the freedom, knowing that one of my passions is have an impact. Now all of a sudden I could start to align the dots and make a a map or a blueprint on how to move forward. As a result, I'm doing things like creating an online course. I'm looking for personnel to take what I've done and to grow it and build a team around it. Are these processes that are going to happen in a week, in a month? Likely not. It's not possible, but likely not. It's going to take action. It's going to take some time. But knowing where I want to go and taking the steps in that direction is going to open me up and eventually give me the life that I desire. If I didn't do the planning, if I didn't stop to say, okay, well, what is it that I want? There's no way I would get there. I would start digging my hole even further to the point where I don't even recognize my life. Some of you may be in that spot. Maybe you married the wrong person and now all of a sudden you have like 5 kids and you're like, what do I do? All I have to do, I just got to put my head down and I have to just work because I have a family to support. Maybe that's where you are. But I want to reframe. I want to challenge you to just think about it a little bit differently. If you improve 1% a day, even a week, when you compound that over the course of a year, that's massive growth. That's a massive change. So don't look at it in the short term, but say, okay, well, what do I want long term? And in the short term, it could be just, how can I make where I am more enjoyable? So this way, at the very least, I'm getting some of the emotions I want to feel. And then what are the small things that I could do over the next day, week, months, years to get me to that place? Because it's always possible. You've heard stories about people who come from the worst circumstances, the worst places in their life, and end up doing a complete turnaround and then are living the life of their dreams. This comes with first understanding where it is you want to go. So where do you want to go? Right? Let's start first with saying, okay, well, what are the monsters that we feel are scaring us or holding us captive, right? What are the prisons you created? It's important to understand these first and how they align to the rest of, how they relate to the rest of your life. How do they relate to your relationship with your family? You may be working 12 hours a day where the only thing you want to do when you get back home is you want to eat, go to sleep, because you know you have to wake up super early to have that commute to work 12 hours, commute back, and it's just this vicious cycle. So we have to get you off the hamster wheel. How does where you are right now relate to all these different areas? Secondly, what is it that you want? If you can create it any way you want, what would you create? Start to get that vision. How would you want to feel? And when you're looking at these different areas of your life, how do you want, and I'm using career as an example, but it doesn't have to be career. Like if we were using your family and your relationships as where you felt imprisoned, how would it relate? Like what is your ideal in how you want it to relate to your emotional life, your career, your spirituality? And then the next step is, all right, what do I have to do to start to move in this direction? Maybe just asking yourself the questions right here is the first step. Write down something. It doesn't matter how small it is. It could be researching a video on YouTube, but something that's going to put your mind in that place where now you're starting to just apply conscious thought, because the only way you are going to be able to create a life you love is through conscious thought. Write down at least like 3 steps. Right? If you've listened to my other podcasts, it sounds like I'm repeating the same thing because it all is the same. Everything requires first knowing what you want. Secondly, knowing where you are. And next, what you have to do to get there, the strategy of it. It is the same for everything, every area of your life. But the problem arises that most people don't apply the conscious thought, don't take the time to look at their life and say, okay, well, where am I? What am I creating here? What do I want? And as a result, they create by default, and then you wake up one day and you don't even know where the hell you are. or how to turn back. I don't want that for your life. So the attention with these podcasts and all of the things that I do is to connect you to the life that you want, is to give you the emotions that you want daily, is to have you experience the fullness and richness of life by getting outside of your current predicament, by changing your perception. Maybe travel is a big thing I always promote, because traveling throws you into a place where you're completely, you don't know what to do. There's no perception. You have to go with the flow. You have to open yourself up to what's in this moment. And it's about enjoyment. So if this makes any kind of sense, then I encourage you to check out my website, DonnyRaus.com, DonnyRaus.com. Sign up for the mailing list. I'm going to be doing a live course over in the mid-year where we'll take a look at your entire life. We'll create visions, look at the beliefs and the strategies on how to move your life in the direction you want to go. But we're also going to do it from the place of experiences, right? As I had just said, I believe that life is meant to be experienced. Like the emotions that you want are about, just literally taking time for the small things. But letting these experiences and the emotions you want be your guide for where you're going to focus and put your energy. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you have any questions or comments or would like to share an experience you've had, you could do so by visiting my website, www.DonnyRaus.com. Send me a message. I would love to hear from you. Remember, you guys, your life is meant to be enjoyed. Your life is meant to be lived in a way that is fulfilling to you. You can do this. You can create the life of your dreams. I believe in you. It just takes bringing some consciousness and thinking about your life differently. Remember, you only get one life. Live it. God bless, and I will see you again soon.